somewhere in the middle of Texas, there are counties where the idea of a building permit feels like a rumor somebody heard once and never bothered to verify. Not officially, not on paper, but in practice, across wide stretches of rural land, the regulatory apparatus that governs construction in most of America simply never gained traction. While most of the country wrapped home building in layers of code, inspection schedules, and forms that require other forms to validate them, a handful of Texas counties just carried on. In the average American city, putting up a simple structure is an administrative event. You want a cabin? That's a site plan, an engineering review, a permit, a fee, another fee, an inspection before the foundation, an inspection after the foundation, and then a final inspection where someone stands in your doorway and decides whether your handrail is exactly 36 inches. You haven't even picked out furniture yet. Meanwhile, the lumber you bought 3 weeks ago is warping in the rain because the approval process outlasted the weather. Texas is not immune to this. Try something creative in Houston's city limits, and you'll discover quickly that Texas cities have rules too. But the state is enormous. 254 counties enormous. And once you leave the metros, once you drive past the last subdivision and the last chain restaurant and the last billboard advertising personal injury lawyers, the landscape changes. And so do the expectations. Out there, scattered across West Texas, the borderlands, the hill country fringes, and the empty middle stretches that most maps barely bother labeling, there are counties where off-grid living isn't an alternative lifestyle. It's just Tuesday, where solar panels aren't a political statement, they're how you charge your phone, where the county government has more pressing concerns than your composting toilet, like maintaining 200 miles of unpaved road with a budget that would make a school bake sale look well-funded. Before we go further, a necessary note. When I describe a county as friendly to off-grid building, I'm not saying it's a regulatory vacuum where anything goes and nobody cares. What I'm describing is a practical reality shaped by low population density, minimal development pressure, and vast distances between properties. In most of these places, the county simply doesn't have the staff, budget, or particular motivation to regulate rural land the way a city would. That creates space, literally and figuratively, for people who want to build something modest on their own terms. It's not chaos, it's just quiet. And these 16 counties are some of the quietest places left. Start at the far western edge of Texas, pressed against the New Mexico border, and you'll find a county that barely qualifies as populated. Loving County. The entire county holds roughly 64 people. Not 64,000, not 640, 64. In the most recent census, it recorded the smallest population of any county in the entire United States. The county seat is Mentone, which is less a town and more a geographic agreement that something should exist here. There is no incorporated city in Loving County, no traffic lights, no public school within its borders. The landscape is flat, dry, sun-blasted oil country. Mesquite and caliche stretch to the horizon in every direction, interrupted only by the occasional pump jack nodding slowly at the ground like it's agreeing with something nobody said. Land parcels here are difficult to price consistently because so few change hands, but when they do, raw acreage sometimes appears in the range of $300 to $1,200 per acre depending on mineral rights and access. The trade-offs are obvious. This is one of the most isolated places in the lower 48. Water must be hauled or sourced from wells drilled deep. The nearest proper grocery store is in Pecos, roughly 30 miles away. Summer heat sits heavy and doesn't leave until October decides it's had enough. But if your definition of off-grid starts with the phrase, "nobody within earshot," Loving County is where that sentence ends. With 64 residents across 677 square miles, your nearest neighbor isn't just far away. They might not exist at all. Move southeast along the border, and the land stays dry but begins to stretch into wider valleys. Hudspeth County runs along the Mexican border just east of El Paso, and the word remote finally means something here. Around 3,000 people live across the entire county. The main settlement is Sierra Blanca, a small railroad town along Interstate 10 that most drivers pass through without even lifting their foot off the accelerator. Beyond that highway, the county opens into vast desert basins flanked by distant mountain ranges. It looks like the backdrop to a film nobody made yet. Land in Hudspeth County still appears on listing sites roughly in the range of $300 to $1,500 per acre. Some parcels are genuinely cheap, unimproved desert land far from paved roads that you could buy for less than a used sedan. Others, with better access, run higher but still feel like a pricing error compared to anywhere within 2 hours of a major city. The summers are brutal, water requires forethought, and the nearest town with real services is a serious drive in either direction. What Hudspeth offers is something harder to price. Open sky in every direction. Nights so dark you can see the Milky Way without squinting, without trying, without even particularly wanting to. It just shows up. And the kind of quiet that takes a few days to stop stop noticing, because your ears keep expecting something to fill it. Just northeast, the terrain shifts. The flat desert floor suddenly erupts into mountains and rocky canyons. Culberson County is where the Guadalupe Mountains slice through West Texas, including Guadalupe Peak, the highest point in the state at 8,751 feet. Despite that kind of scenery, Culberson County holds only about 2,000 people, most of them in or near Van Horn, the small town that sits at the intersection of Interstate 10 and Highway 54. Van Horn is the kind of place where travelers stop for gas and keep going without realizing what surrounds them. Jeff Bezos built a rocket launch facility nearby, which tells you something about the kind of emptiness available. The backcountry here is vast, dry, and mostly empty. Parcels generally fall in the range of $900 to $3,000 per acre. The mountains bring cooler nights and slightly more precipitation than the surrounding desert floor, but services remain limited and distances remain honest. Still, if you're drawn to the idea of building something small against the backdrop of a mountain range that most Texans don't even know their state contains, Culberson County makes the argument without raising its voice. East of Culberson, and slightly north of the mountains, Reeves County sprawls across a flat desert plain anchored by the town of Pecos. The population sits around 15,000, which makes it one of the more populated counties on this list. Pecos itself has grocery stores, gas stations, restaurants, and a Walmart. Luxuries that shouldn't feel remarkable but somehow do after spending any time in Loving or Hudspeth County, where buying milk involves genuine planning. Outside town, the county flattens into rangeland and oil country. Land prices vary depending on proximity to Pecos and whether mineral rights are included, a detail that matters enormously in this part of Texas. Rural parcels without minerals might appear roughly in the range of $800 to $2,500 per acre. It's still hot, still dry, still very much West Texas in both appearance and temperament, but Pecos offers a base of services that the counties around it simply do not have. For someone building off-grid who still wants a proper grocery run within 20 minutes and a hardware store that doesn't require packing a cooler for the drive, Reeves County earns a serious look. South of Culberson, the scenery changes dramatically. Jeff Davis County is where West Texas briefly stops pretending to be a flat desert and becomes something almost alpine. The Davis Mountains rise out of the surrounding terrain, a volcanic range of cool canyons, pine-dotted ridgelines, and winding ranch roads that climb past 5,000 feet in elevation. About 2,000 people live here, mostly around the town of Fort Davis, a quiet settlement that feels pulled from another century and seems perfectly comfortable staying there. The night skies here are among the darkest in North America. The McDonald Observatory sits in these mountains, its telescopes pointed at galaxies that most Americans can't see through their suburban light pollution. That darkness isn't accidental. It's a product of the same emptiness that makes this county what it is. No sprawl means no lights. No lights means you can see the actual universe from your front porch. Land prices reflect the scenery. Parcels here typically fall between $3,000 and $5,000 per acre, sometimes higher for elevated properties with views that would cost 10 times more if they existed within 3 hours of a city. You're paying for what the flat desert counties give away: shade, elevation, cooler air, and a night sky that doesn't apologize for showing off. For off-grid builders who want beauty alongside their solitude, Jeff Davis County might be the most visually compelling option in the state. South again, and the mountains slope back into open desert. Presidio County stretches along the border, vast and largely empty. About 6,000 people live here, split mostly between the town of Presidio near the Rio Grande and Marfa, the small desert settlement that somehow became an international art world curiosity and never fully explained why. Marfa's reputation is its own strange thing. Minimalist galleries and old buildings, unexplained lights that appear over the desert at night and have resisted scientific explanation for over a century. A Prada storefront on a highway shoulder that's actually a sculpture and has never sold a single handbag. Outside those peculiarities, Presidio County is what it's always been: open ranch land, enormous parcels of dry grassland and brush running toward distant mesas that turn orange at sunset and refuse to photograph as well as they actually look. Land prices range roughly from $500 to $2,000 per acre depending on road access and terrain. Summers are genuinely hot. The nearest city with real infrastructure is hours away in any direction. What Presidio County trades in isn't comfort. It's the kind of space where the horizon line belongs to you alone and nobody is particularly interested in what you're doing with it. Presidio County is wide. Brewster County is somehow wider. At over 6,000 square miles, it's the largest county in Texas, bigger than some states, bigger than several small countries, and home to fewer than 10,000 people. Most of those residents live in Alpine, a small university town that serves as the cultural center of the Big Bend region. It has bookstores, restaurants, a brewery, and the unexpected energy of a place that likes itself and doesn't need your validation to continue. Beyond Alpine, the county dissolves into enormous wilderness. Big Bend National Park covers over 800,000 acres in the southern portion, where the Rio Grande carves through deep limestone canyons so dramatic they feel geologically excessive. The scale is difficult to communicate without standing in it. Remote parcels without utilities might appear around $700 to $2,500 per acre. Properties closer to Alpine or with scenic access run considerably higher. The isolation is genuine. The heat is serious. The nearest major city involves hours of driving through landscapes that look imported from another planet. But for sheer scale, for the feeling of smallness against something ancient and indifferent, Brewster County is genuinely hard to match anywhere in the continental United States. East of Brewster, and somehow even quieter, Terrell County holds roughly 750 people. That's not a town. That's the entire county. There are apartment complexes in Dallas with more residents. The county seat is Sanderson, a small desert settlement along US Route 90 that serves as a refueling point for travelers and not much beyond that. Leave Sanderson in any direction and the landscape returns to deep West Texas emptiness. Dry creek beds cutting through limestone bluffs. Ranch land stretching past the edge of sight. The occasional hawk circling something you can't see. Land prices here sit roughly in the range of $600 to $1,300 per acre for larger remote properties. There is almost no development pressure. There is almost no development, period. What Terrell County offers isn't glamorous. It's not the mountains of Jeff Davis or the canyons of Big Bend. It's silence. Silence so thorough that after a few days, you start hearing things you forgot existed, like your own thoughts, complete and uninterrupted, without a notification chime cutting through them. North of Terrell and Brewster, Pecos County pulls things slightly back toward the functional end of the spectrum. The population is around 15,000, centered on Fort Stockton, a historic town along Interstate 10 with motels, gas stations, a few restaurants, and the general atmosphere of being the last reliable stop before the landscape swallows the road. Step beyond the town limits, and the county reverts to classic ranch land. Dry hills, fence lines running straight to the horizon, the occasional windmill turning slowly against the sky as though it has all the time in the world, which it does. Larger rural parcels sometimes appear roughly in the range of $700 to $2,200 per acre, with more remote properties sitting at the lower end. Fort Stockton won't remind anyone of a city, but it has what the surrounding counties don't: a supermarket, a hardware store, and enough population to keep the lights on at more than one restaurant simultaneously. For off-grid builders who want open land without completely sacrificing access to a bag of screws and a carton of eggs, Pecos County finds a reasonable middle ground. Southeast of Pecos and east of Terrell, the land spreads into vast rolling rangeland. Crockett County covers over 2,800 square miles, and its entire population of roughly 3,200 people is centered almost entirely in the small town of Ozona. Everything outside Ozona is ranch country. Some of the largest working ranches in Texas sit here, stretching for miles without a fence break, managed by families who've been on the same land for generations and intend to continue. The terrain is classic Edwards Plateau. Dry grass, scrub oak, limestone outcroppings, gentle hills extending to a flat horizon that never seems to get closer no matter how long you drive toward it. Land here tends to fall roughly in the range of $1,500 to $3,500 per acre, reflecting its position on the plateau where rainfall is slightly more reliable than the desert counties to the west. Ozona has basic services, grocery, gas, hardware, but calling it a hub would require a generosity of language that the town itself would probably decline. What Crockett County has going for it is consistency. No drama, no real estate speculation, no sudden influx of remote workers reshaping the character. It's been ranch land for over a century, and it still looks exactly like it did, give or take a satellite dish. Northeast of Crockett, following the same plateau, Sutton County is held together almost entirely by the town of Sonora. About 3,300 people live in the county, and Sonora accounts for most of them. The town sits at the crossroads of Interstate 10 and US Highway 277, giving it slightly more traffic than most places on this list, though. Traffic here means you might wait behind 2 trucks at the gas station instead of 1. Outside Sonora, the county is Edwards Plateau ranch land, similar to Crockett but with slightly more vegetation, more rolling terrain, and the occasional draw lined with live oak trees that provide the first shade you've seen in an hour. Parcels typically appear in the range of $2,000 to $4,500 per acre. The caverns of Sonora, considered some of the most beautiful cave formations in the world, sit just outside town, a geological accident millions of years in the making that draws visitors visitors who then leave without realizing what the surrounding land looks like at sunset, which is their loss. Sutton County doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't need to. The people who find it were usually looking for exactly this kind of place, even if they couldn't describe it before they arrived. South of Crockett and Sutton, the land drops toward the border again. Val Verde County offers something genuinely rare in this region of Texas: water. Amistad Reservoir stretches across miles of rugged terrain along the Rio Grande, one of the largest lakes in the state, holding enough water to make the surrounding desert feel like it's playing a practical joke. The main town is Del Rio, a border community of about 35,000 people, making Val Verde the most populated county on this list by a considerable margin. But population in Val Verde is concentrated. Outside Del Rio, the county opens into wide hills and large ranch properties that feel nothing like a town of 35,000 exists anywhere nearby. Rural parcels can fall somewhere in the range of $1,200 to $3,500 per acre depending on location, access, and whether you can see the reservoir from your property, which adds a premium that people willingly pay. For homesteaders and off-grid builders, the presence of a large body of water nearby changes the entire equation. Water is the hardest resource to solve in West Texas. Every other county on this list requires you to drill, haul, collect, or pray. Val Verde answers the question without making you work for it. East of Val Verde, tucked between the border and the hill country, Kinney County sits quietly in the way certain places do, between more recognized destinations, noticed mainly by people who got slightly lost on the way to somewhere else and liked what they found. About 3,000 people live here, most in Bracketville, a small town that once served as the filming location for several Hollywood westerns and now serves mostly as the place where ranchers buy fencing supplies and feed. The landscape is rolling brush country, low hills, mesquite thickets, dry creek beds lined with live oak trees that have been growing slowly since before anyone built a fence around them. Land prices sit roughly in the range of $2,000 to $4,000 per acre. Del Rio and its services aren't impossibly far, close enough for a supply run, far enough that you'd never confuse Kinney County for a suburb. What Kinney County offers is straightforward: space, quiet, and the particular freedom that comes from living in a place nobody is watching too closely, because there's nothing to watch and nobody assigned to watch it. Northeast of Kinney, the terrain begins to shift. Limestone shelves replace flat brush. The trees get taller. Creek beds carry water that actually moves. Edwards County sits on the western edge of the hill country, where the geology transitions from desert to something greener, more textured, and slightly more forgiving to anyone who'd rather not fight the land just to grow a tomato. About 1,400 people live here, mostly around Rock Springs, a ranching town with a courthouse, a feed store, a post office, and no particular urgency about anything. The daily rhythm here never got around to speeding up, and nobody filed a complaint. This area is known for hunting. White-tailed deer, turkey, the occasional exotic species on private game ranches that charge city people significant money for the privilege. That hunting economy supports land values. Parcels in Edwards County often fall roughly between $2,500 and $5,000 per acre depending on terrain, tree cover, and road access. The scenery is hill country at its least commercialized. No wineries, no wedding venues, no boutique hotels advertising rustic charm at $400 a night. Just actual rustic, without the charm markup. East of Edwards, the hill country deepens. Rio County sits along the upper Frio River, where cold spring-fed water carves through limestone canyons and old-growth bald cypress trees line the banks like they've been standing guard for centuries, which they have. The county seat is Leakey, pronounced Lakey, not Leaky, though the river does whatever it wants regardless of local pronunciation agreements. About 3,400 people live in the county. The Frio River draws summer visitors, families floating in tubes, swimming in natural pools so clear you can count the pebbles on the bottom, camping along the banks in the kind of heat that makes cold water feel like a religious experience. But outside that seasonal activity, Rio County returns to its default state. Quiet ranch land, steep canyon walls, and roads that wind through terrain too rugged for anyone to have ever considered a subdivision. Land prices here reflect the water access and scenery. Parcels range roughly from $3,000 to $7,000 per acre, with riverfront or canyon properties commanding the top end. It's more expensive than the desert counties, but what you're buying is categorically different. Running water, shade, green things growing without mechanical intervention. Things that West Texas treats as theoretical concepts, Rio County treats as Tuesday. For off-grid builders, the combination of rural freedom and natural water supply is uncommon. The Frio River has been running through these canyons since long before Texas was Texas. It doesn't seem inclined to stop. North of Edwards and Rio, back toward the center of the state, Menard County occupies a spot on the map that most Texans drive past without registering. About About 2,000 people live here. The county seat is the town of Menard, small, unhurried, built along the San Saba River, which moves through town with the kind of calm persistence that suggests it's been doing this far longer than anyone has been paying attention. The San Saba was once famous for something else entirely: rumors of a lost Spanish silver mine somewhere in the surrounding hills. Those rumors brought prospectors in the 1700s, then settlers, then soldiers, then disappointment. The mine was never found, or was found and lost again, depending on which old-timer you ask and how much coffee they'd had. What remained was a county of rolling ranch land, pecan orchards along the river bottom, stone fences built by German settlers 150 years ago, and a pace of life that never found a compelling reason to accelerate. Land here falls roughly in the range of $2,500 to $5,000 per acre. It's not West Texas cheap, but it's not hill country tourist pricing either. Menard County sits in a gap, too far west to attract the Austin overflow, too far east to feel like the desert, too quiet to trend on social media. That in-between quality keeps it permanently overlooked, which is precisely, exactly, and specifically what makes it worth mentioning on a list like this. 16 counties, one thread connecting all of them, space that nobody rushed to fill, desert valleys and mountain passes, reservoir shorelines and spring-fed rivers, limestone canyons and flat mesquite plains. The landscapes change, sometimes dramatically within a single hour of driving, but the underlying condition stays the same across every one of them. These are places where the machinery of regulation never fully arrived, because there was never enough density to justify it, where building codes exist less as a framework and more as a suggestion carried faintly on the wind, where the county office might technically have a process for reviewing construction plans, but that office is also closed on Wednesdays, and the person who handles permits is also the person who handles road maintenance, and right now they're 40 miles out repairing a culvert that washed away in last month's storm. None of these counties are paradise. The summers will test your patience and your hydration. The distances will test your fuel budget. The nearest hospital, in most cases, will test your willingness to plan ahead and drive carefully. Convenience, in the way most Americans understand the word, does not apply here and never really did, but something else does. The particular, hard-to-describe satisfaction of standing on land that belongs to you, looking at something you built with your own decisions, your own hands, your own timeline, and knowing that the process involved materials, effort, and maybe a couple of YouTube tutorials, but not a single permit application, not a single inspection fee, and not a single man named Gary arriving with a clipboard to measure something that doesn't need measuring. Texas is still enormous. Most of it is still quiet, and somewhere out past the last billboard, past the last traffic light, past the last place that shows up with a confident pin on Google Maps, there's a piece of it that nobody's paying attention to. That might be exactly the point.